Okay, even though we're in the middle of the Seder, I want to finish that up. But first, just a quick reminder. After Ma'ariv tonight, you have to go home. You have to do B'dikas Chametz. You're not allowed to eat a meal. You're not allowed to learn. You're not allowed to do anything before B'dikas Chametz. Now, the custom is like we learned that you put out 10 pieces of bread. As always, I got a phone call today from somebody who asked me two different questions, different people. One guy called me, he's out east. So he called me, he says, we put out 10 pieces of bread. My kids put out 10 pieces of bread. We only found 9. We're looking all over the place. We can't find it. There's no way in the world we're going to find it. So he said, number one, why in the world did you let your kids put out the pieces of bread? So go tell your kids to find them. That's number one. Number two, the problem is like this. If by us we're makbid that the 10 pieces of bread together should be a kazayis, because then when you burn the chametz, you mekayim a mitzvah tashbitzu, because you're burning the kazayis of chametz. So I asked him, how big was each piece that you put out? Was it a big piece or a little piece? If the big piece would be a kazayis, then technically he would have to go look until he finds it. If it's smaller than a kazayis, it's a little piece, so then you can assume if it's somewhere he's mevatel it, it's less than a kazayis, it doesn't mean anything to him. That's in addition to the fact that tomorrow when they sell the chametz, see, in halacha it says if you find chametz during Pesach, you have to burn it. Yom Tif, you're not allowed to touch it, it's muktzah, so you have to put a keli over it, and then chol hamoed you have to burn it. Today, the minig is poskim bring down because today we sell the chametz. Any chametz you have in the house is included in the selling. So if you find, let's say, a good bottle of whiskey during Pesach, whatever, you don't have to throw it out, you don't have to burn it. What you have to do is put it away because it was already sold. So I told the guy, next time, make sure kids don't put out the 10 pieces of bread. Then another lady called me today if she can use moldy bread for the 10 pieces of bread. I said, why not? You're going to burn it anyway. Instead of throwing it out, you might as well burn it in the chametz. I mean, why can't you use moldy bread? Moldy bread. Years ago, by the way, in Europe, people ate moldy bread. They cut away the mold and they ate the bread. What?
Can you just, because you don't want to lose them, just put the 10 in a row?
No, you're supposed to put them out. But in halacha, some poskim write, you're supposed to mark on a piece of paper where you put them. In halacha it says, if you're going to do b'dikas chametz, just gathering the 10 pieces of bread, that's not b'dikas chametz.
No, you put them 10,
you have to know where they are in normal places that you don't lose it. That's it. And you make sure to get it. And the moldy bread is also good. Okay, tomorrow morning, so after you do b'dikas chametz, it's one bracha for wherever you're going. Even if, let's say, you have to do b'dikas chametz in 2 places. Now don't forget, we learned you have to do b'dikas chametz in your car also. So what happens if you do the house and then you're going to the car? You don't have to make a new bracha because it's all included in the same bracha. Even if you go to a business, to whatever, to do b'dikas chametz, you don't have to make a new bracha.
Can you put the lights inside the house back on when you go find it in the car, or the house has to be dark?
So the question is, it's mentioned in halacha, but it's not halacha, it's practical. When you do b'dikas chametz, do you leave the lights on or do you leave the lights off? There's a different custom. There are different customs. Some people, it's not halacha, halacha brings it down. But they're right, some people leave the lights on, some people leave the lights off. You know what the answer is? Whatever works better for you.
On is for everybody then.
No, some people, the flashlight or the candle works better when it's dark. So again, it doesn't matter. You want to keep it on, you keep it on. You want to keep it off, you keep it off. It doesn't really matter. Okay, I just want to move on. Tomorrow morning, by the way, we don't say Mizmor L'Seder, and for the duration of Pesach, like we learned already. There will be a mitzvah shem, a siyam by the first minyan and a siyam by the second minyan. What?
So the person does the b'dika tonight, the bracha, and then they go to a hotel tomorrow. They have to do another b'dika there without a bracha? Or
only if they brought chametz in there. If there's no chametz, you have to make sure they sometimes have whiskeys, things. Those you have to put away. You don't have to do b'dikas chametz. It's not your chametz. There's no chametz unless if you bring chametz there. Then you would have to do b'dikas chametz. Okay, I want to go back to the Seder where we left off. What? 10:39, and burning and bittul and selling has to be before 11:45. Okay, we left off we finished Magid. Now you come to the biblical, Magid is a biblical mitzvah that night. So now you come to Rochze. Now you're going to do the mitzvah of Meitzi Matzah. So you're left on the Seder plate with 2.5 matzahs. Okay? Because you broke the middle matzah for Yachatz, and now you have 2.5 matzahs. Now, because Shabbos and Yom Tov, you need to have Lechem Mishnah, 2 chalas, 2 matzahs, or whatever it is. So you pick up the 2.5 matzahs after everybody washes. Okay? Now, ideally, everybody should have their piece of matzah that they're going to be eating beforehand. Otherwise, it's going to take a lot of time between the bracha and the actual eating. So everybody should be given their matzah that they're going to be eating. You pick up the 2.5 matzahs, and you make a bracha meitzi lachem enoris. That's for lachem mishnah. You drop the bottom matzah. Now you're left with 1.5 matzahs that you're holding on to. So now you make the bracha ala chilas matzah. Make the second bracha ala chilas matzah. Now, as everything else in halacha, there's an argument. Now, so the halacha, you make a bracha. Now you need to eat a kazayis of matzah. You need to eat a kazayis of matzah. So now the question is, where do you take the kazayis of matzah from? Do you take it from the top matzah or do you take it from the middle matzah? So what does good old halacha do? They say, because we're in doubt, you eat a kazayis from each. You take a kazayis of the top matzah, a kazayis of the middle matzah, and you eat them both together. Now, what happens if somebody can't? They can only eat one kazayis. Which one do they take it from? So Shulchan Aruch says you take from the top matzah. Not the broken matzah, but you take from the matzah because that's the one you made a bracha, and that's the top one, you take a kazayis from that. But it's self-understood that like women or people that don't have their own Seder plate, they don't need to eat 2 kazesim of matzah. The only reason why, if you have a Seder plate, you eat 2 kazesim of matzah, because we don't know it's from the top or from the middle. But if you're taking from the box anyway, and you don't have your own Seder plate, like by the Sfardim, there's one Seder plate for everybody, right? So that even the men in the house, if they don't have their own Seder plate, there's no reason, absolutely no reason why you need to eat 2 kazaysim of matzah. You have to eat 1 kazayis of matzah. Because we don't know, top or middle, you eat both. So so you eat the matzah. You have to eat the matzah quickly. You have to eat what's called b'chdei achilas pras. Okay? So how much is that in time? So in halacha, it ranges, you have opinions, from 2 minutes to 11 minutes. That's the range of how much Kedei Achilas Pras is. The poskim say you should try to eat it within 4 minutes, try not to take more than 7 minutes. So in other words, you can't just nibble on the matzah. You have to eat the matzah quickly and not talk in the middle, obviously, you're in the middle of a mitzvah. And you eat the matzah. And you have to eat it, the men have to eat it reclining on the left. If not, they probably have to eat it again. What?
Is there a certain kavanah that we want to have while we eat the matzah?
The kavanah is that you're doing what Hashem wants us to do. The first night, in Zohar, the matzah is called Michla de Hemenusa, and the second night is called Michla de Asvasa. The first night is Michla, food of Emunah, and the second one is the food of healing. So when you eat the matzah, in addition to the fact that you're having in mind that you're doing what Hashem wants, you also have to hope that you're getting emunah. By the way, when you make a meitzi and achilas matzah, you have to have in mind also that this goes for the kairach, for the sandwich, and for the afikomen. All 3 things. Okay, that's the mitzvah achilas matzah. You can have the thin matzahs that you have 11 matzahs in a pound. Then you can have the thicker matzahs that you have 6 matzahs in a pound. So if the matzah is thicker, obviously you have to eat less than if a matzah is thinner. That's it. Leave it at that. Okay, after after meitzi matzah comes morar. So you have to eat a kazayas of morar. Now, morar is a rabbinic mitzvah nowadays, because the only mention of morar in the Torah is only al matzahs umreidim yechlu. That the Korban Pesach has to be eaten with matzah and mortar. There's no other pasuk that says eat mortar. By matzah, there's a mitzvah. By erev teichlu matzahs, you have to eat matzahs. So matzah nowadays is not dependent on the Korban Pesach. There's a separate mitzvah, you have to eat matzah. But mortar nowadays is rabbinic, but still a mitzvah that you have to do. Men and women have to do it. So if you're having, let's say, depends what you're using for mortar. If you're using, let's say, romaine lettuce, the size is about 8 inches by 10 inches. A leaf that's 8 by 10 or 2 leaves together, whatever it is, 8 by 10. Then if you also use horseradish, that all combines to the amount of a kazayas. But because it's midrabanan, you could be more lenient on the amount of the kazayas. So you eat mortar, and the way it works is like this. According to our custom, we're crazy in Gebrux of not getting the matzah wet. So we take, before we dip the mortar in the charesis, we take a little bit of charesis and we put a little bit of wine in it. And then you dip the mortar 3 times in the charesis with the wine in it. And then we make the bracha We learned already we don't make adama because that you made when you did the karpas. You had in mind that that's also going for the mortar. So you just make the bracha lachilas mortar. You have to eat it. It's much easier to eat than the matzah, but you have to eat it quickly without talking in the middle. After mortar, then you come to kairach. Kairach is a sandwich. Why the sandwich? Because there was a famous guy by the name of Hillel, not even Rabbi Hillel, who maintained that when the Torah says al matzah simreirim yechlu, it has to be mamish together. Chachamim learned matzah, mortar separate, Korban Pesach separately. Hillel held al matzah simreirim yechlu, you must eat it together. So according to Hillel, there was actually a combo of matzah, mortar, and Korban Pesach. That was mamish the first original combo, Pesach combo that they ate. So now, and what do you do with the mortar? Now, according to our custom, because we're so strict about not getting the matzah wet, we take a little bit of dry charesis, we put it on the mortar, and we shake it off. And then we put the mortar in between the matzah. You take a kazayas in the bottom matzah. You take a kazayas. You take a kazayas of mortar from the bottom mortar of the Seder plate. And then you put it together and you say we don't have Korban Pesach, just matzah and mortar. And we say Keinas Hillel, and we sit down you're sitting. Recline and you eat the matzah. Okay? After Kairach comes Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch is the meal. Now during the meal you're allowed to drink wine. You're allowed, between cup 1 and 2, you're not allowed to add wine. Between 2 and 3, you can add wine. Between 3 and 4 you can't, and after 4 you can't. But during the wine you're allowed to eat, you're allowed to drink wine. It's interesting, we mentioned this, I think. The Rebbe drank wine by the meal, but he didn't say l'chaim on it. Because he didn't want to give credence that it's like adding to another cup. So the Rebbe would drink, but he didn't, like this, they would say l'chaim, but the Rebbe didn't say l'chaim by the Seder. Okay, now Shulchan Aruch is the meal. If you can still eat, after all that matzah and mortar and everything. So, our custom is, many people have a custom, we begin the meal with the hard-boiled egg from the Seder plate. We dip it into salt water, and then we eat the egg. That's the way we begin the meal. So you don't want to eat the whole egg, you can share it, you can whatever. But the custom is to eat that's the way we begin the meal, with the hard-boiled egg dipped into salt water. What? We don't say anything. The reason why we have the egg is because the Korban Chagiga, like we said, that we discussed a while ago, when you weren't here. Okay, then you have Shulchan Aruch, you eat, what you want, but you have to leave over a place for the Afrikaiman. Because at the end of the meal, you eat Afrikaiman. Now, in that certain place, our custom is, if possible, to eat 2 kezesim for Afrikaiman. One for the Korban Pesach and one for the matzah eaten with the Korban Pesach. So if you can't, 1 ounce, 1 kazayis is enough. But our minhag is to try to eat 2 kazayisim of afikomen. If you can, also reclining, and you eat it You don't have to be careful so much in the zman of eating it because it's not the actual mitzvah. But it's interesting, halacha and Shulchan Aruch, by the way. What happens, I got a lot of questions this year. What happens if somebody they can't eat matzah, they're allergic to wheat. Even there's oat matzah, which is gluten-free, but they can't even grains. So, let's say I could only eat one kazayas of matzah. That's all the person medically is able to eat. So now you have matzah, kairach, rafikaimer. So when should they eat the matzah? The kazayas of matzah they're going to be eating, when should they eat it? So the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch, to believe it or not, you eat it for the afikaimer. That means by halachilas matzah, you don't wash, you don't make a bracha ametin halachilas matzah. You have the mortar, the kairach you don't eat, because you can't eat the matzah, right? And then by the afikaimen it's like this. You eat the meal without matzah. Then, when you're coming to the afikaimen, you wash then for bread. You do not make al natilas yadayim, because al natilas yadayim we learned already during the year, you can only make when you eat 2 kazesim, a kibetza of bread. Even during the year, if I wash them, I'm going to have a little piece of bread, you can't make al natilas yadayim. The only time you make al natilas yadayim when you wash for bread is if you're going to be eating 2 ounces of bread. 2 kazesim, a kibetza, but a kibetza is 2 kazesim. So he's only eating 1 kazayis of matzah. They can't make al natilas yadayim. Then they say the bracha al achilas matzah, and they eat afikaimen. What?
Here's the rationale why not half of a kazayit in the beginning, half a kazayit for the afikoman versus only in.
Because if you eat a half a kazayis, you didn't do the mitzvah. So you're not doing, and there's too much of a time frame between them. We'll just finish with this. There's an interesting discussion in Achreinim. We know, if you eat a kazayis of chazer, okay, you get whipped, lashes, right? Kazayis is the amount, everything has an amount. So if you want to get, when Bezin would warn you lashes with everything, you'd have to eat a kazayis. What happens if somebody eats a half a kazayis of treif? Okay? Or they eat a half a kazayis of something that they're not supposed to. So there's a famous machlekes between Rabbi Yechon and Shlakish if chatzi shir is asim min ha-Torah or not asim min ha-Torah. Okay? The halacha is, even chatzi shir, half the amount, is biblically forbidden. In other words, somebody eats a half an ounce of pig, you can't get lashes because you didn't eat enough, but it's still, you transgressed biblical. That's why you learn, remember, Yom Kippur, you eat a smaller amount and then you wait, so then it's much easier. So now the shaila like this is, if I eat a half a kazayis of matzah, just like half of pig is enough that is biblically forbidden, do we say the same thing in a positive way? In other words, if I can't eat matzah, there's no way I can eat a kazayis. Obviously I can't make a bracha on a half a kazayis, right? Because I'm not doing it. But is it worthwhile eating a half a kazayis of matzah? Is it worth anything? So there's a machlekes d'achreinim if that's called, if it's chatzi shir by a mitzvah is valuable in any way whatsoever or not.